Right, right.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the next.
But normally,
sorry.
Yeah, my focus is on Central Kalimantan. So I work with Borneo Nature Foundation as well for quite some time.
Right, right. So Noya, you have Sara and Zahara. You need to be clear who you address.
I think I just realized a week ago because the speaker's name is a bit almost similar, Zara and Sara. So yeah, I hope my pronunciation will be clear when I call out your name.
Or call me like Sarah T or something like that.
Oh, okay. Sarah T. Because Zara, we have Zara Q.
Yeah.
Which just sounds like a rapper.
Sounds cool.
Yeah. Because but that's okay. Let's make it fun for this. Yeah, okay. I will start admitting the people that already waiting. So yeah, you can see now. People are joining in. Okay, hi everyone. I see more people coming in, but I just want to say hi to you all for joining this webinar. We haven't officially started because we are still waiting for more people to join. So yeah, we will be still waiting maybe like some minutes. And while we are doing that, if anyone, your microphone should be muted automatically upon joining this room. But if not, then I would love to, I would love to inform you that please mute yourself first. You will have the opportunity to talk later, of course, during the discussion and during the question and answer session. But for now, please mute your microphone first. Okay. So hello everyone. For you who just entered now, we are still waiting for more participants. So please be patient for maybe 1 minute more. And we already have all the panelists now, and thank you for joining us. But we will start the webinar officially in 1 minute. So yeah, please be patient. Okay, so a lot of people is now here already. So welcome everybody. I want to welcome you to join our event, the Tiltak webinar, titled Peatland and Sustainable and What About Them? So thank you again for joining us. And now we are here with me, your moderator for this event. My name is Noya. I'm from Juhana Foundation. And first, I want to ask if you guys hear my voice clearly or not, because I want to make sure. Okay, thank you, Rainer. Yeah. So again, to the introduction, my name is Noya, and then I'm from Juhana Foundation, who for now organized this event, which is actually under a series of festivities that the organization have, where we celebrate the World Peatlands Day just earlier this month on the 2nd of June 2021. So we have several activities, and this webinar is one part of them. And let me share my screen. Wait a minute. Yeah, I hope you can clearly see my screen. Yeah, so for today, as I mentioned before, the topic or the theme for this webinar is peatland and sustainability, because we commemorate the Peatland World Peatland Day earlier this month. And for now, for today, we have these three amazing panelists that will be joining us during the discussion later on. So we have now Zara and Sara T, Dr. Sara Thornton, and also Rainer. If the participant can scroll through the participant list, maybe you will find those names as our panelists today. And before we actually entering the discussion, I would love to share with you about some rules, like not very strict rules, but some rules to make just this event went smoothly. So first, as you might notice, your microphone will be automatically muted when entering the room in the Zoom session. But if not, then please mute yourself first. You will have the opportunity later on to talk. And then this webinar is recorded and also actually live streamed to TGF YouTube that will be shared in the link. If you have any concern about the recording, then you can talk to us, like to me, to the moderator, or to the host privately, and then we can modify that thing for you specifically. And then the third, we expect all participants here, also the panelists, to join the poll and the quiz, which will be shared later in this event, and there will be some gifts available. So excited. And then later, the participant can ask questions through the Q&A, question and answer session in two ways. So you can chat using the chat feature in the Zoom, or maybe if someone see us in YouTube, then you can also ask that in the chat box in YouTube. And please write using this format: name, institution, name of the panelist that you might want to specifically ask, and then the question itself. You can do that anytime. If you already have burning question right now, then you can write it down in the chat box since now on. But you have other option for later that you can use for those joining via Zoom. You can use the raise hand feature when the Q&A session actually start. And the moderator, me, will unmute your microphone. And later, we will also, as promised, we will also distribute the e-certificate. And for this distribution purpose, we expect you to fill in a survey at the end of the webinar later. And the last, we highly encourage you to have fun and maybe share about this event in social media, in Facebook, in Instagram, LinkedIn, or anything. And please tag and follow us, Thai Juhana Foundation, in any social media. It's at Thai Juhana Foundation. So yeah, without further ado, we will enter the topic of what we actually want to discuss this afternoon. And as you may notice, when you register to this event, there is one specific question that we ask in that form, which is, what is the first word that pops in your mind when you hear peatland? And as you can see here, there are a lot of words, and the size of the words actually represent how many people that answer that word or the one that's similar to this word. So we have now 3 words that is actually come to people's mind when hearing about peatland, which is carbon, wet or wetlands, and also fires. But there are also like some interesting choice such as mosquitoes, Borneo, blessing, future, and there are also like honest answer never heard before. So with this in mind, maybe after you entered this answer during the registration, you already have you gain more information about peatland. So now I would like to invite you to menti.com. I would like to invite you to participate in this menti.com to basically to look at the current situation about how you associate peatland with something. So you can go to www.menti.com and enter this code 636135996, and I believe there is the link in the chat box. And let me start the Menti. Oh, there are people already answering the questions. So yeah, the question is, which word you associate more with peatlands? There are 3 options. First is opportunity, the second is challenge, and the other one, not sure. And actually, you want to know more about peatland. And I will still want to wait for more people, more participants to joining in and then answer this association. So for anyone that haven't just joined or haven't clicked the link, you can just go to the chat box and then click the link to the menti.com that show this screen. So far, we only have 15. So there are less than half people here in the Zoom room participating in this menti.com. Yeah, but the current situation, the opportunity is larger, like 56% of the participants that joining this event actually associate peatland with opportunity instead of challenge and instead of nature. Okay, more balls go into opportunity. Interesting. Okay, so I think this is enough. This is enough to show you how the current situation with the association of peatland in the participant mind. Okay, more people actually go into opportunity up to 60% now. So let me back to the presentation again. And with that in mind, I want to continue. With the main thing, with the discussion itself, because now we already have three amazing panelists. That name is written everywhere in our publication. We have Zara, and also we have Dr. Sara, and then we have Rainer. Maybe I can stop sharing my screen, and then you guys can see their faces. So hi, all the panelists. Hi.
Hi there.
Hi. So yeah, we now have Zara, which is, hi Zara, where are you?
Hi.
Zara, yeah, okay. Zara is our researcher, the Juhana Foundation researcher, and she is also the head of knowledge management. So every publication, especially those are scientific, are written, or at least if you by her. So yeah, she is our gem in Juhana Foundation. And Sara is now a researcher, a peatland enthusiast. Can I say that? A peatland enthusiast. Yeah, and she is now working with University of Leicester, and also working together in a foundation in Borneo, which is Borneo Nature Foundation, where she also have a vast experience with tropical peatland. And lastly, we have Rainer. He is the Executive Director of Center of Indonesian Policy Studies, or CIPS. I believe most of you maybe hear about CIPS work here. And also he joined the Atlas Network, and also some consulting firm in Singapore. So now we will, without further ado, with that in mind, with the polling and with the result of the question that I shared before, I want to start this panel discussion with the presentation, a kind of keynote presentation from Zara, which we hope can at least give you a brief description about what we actually want to talk for the rest of this afternoon. So please, Zara, you can start with your presentation.
Okay, thank you, Noya. I will share my screen first. Is it already shared?
Yes, looking good.
All right. Thank you, Noya, and thank you for everyone who managed to participate this forum. Before I go further with my brief presentation about the overview on global peatlands, I would like to start this presentation with a quick question. You can make a rough guess which one is peatland or out of these four pictures. You can simply comment in the Zoom comments, simply comment A, B, C, or D. All right, I'm gonna give you like 10 seconds to answer this. Okay, simply A, B, C, or D. You don't have to think about it a lot. Yes, some answers are coming up. Please, everyone who haven't put your comment, just as simple as A, B, C, or D, right? Okay, time is up. So what is the answer? Which one is peatland? What is the correct answer of this simple question? The answer is all of them, because each photo is representing different types of peatlands. They are located all over the world, including the boreal, temperate, and tropical regions. But among others, tropical peatlands in Indonesia has gained the most attention, even from the international community. Why? Because I believe Indonesian people have familiar with this kind of situation where peatlands or forest fires are everywhere. Tropical peat fires in this country has been rapidly escalating with serious consequences, both in immediate or long-term consequences. It damages our health, economy, environment, and social aspect. This negative impact is not only affected the well-being of Southeast Asian people, but also on the global level. This is mostly because peatland brings enormous contribution to the world ecosystem. Although it only covers tiny parts of the planet's surface, but they are the largest terrestrial carbon sink. In terms of global water regulation, they also help to minimize the risk of flood or drought. And it also, some of peatland can also provide potable waters. And in Indonesia, especially, peatlands is the source of livelihood, especially in the regions where peatlands are the dominated land cover. Millions of people depend their economic or social resource from peatland, particularly from agriculture sector. And of course, it also provides home to endangered species or wildlife habitat in general. And this is why peatlands highly important for global ecosystem. And these are the global distribution of peatland. You can see that although peatlands is highly attributed to Indonesia, actually the total peatland in the world mostly located in boreal regions or northern part of the planet, where we can see like around 80% are in the boreal or temperate regions. Actually, peat fires also occurred in these areas, like in the Russia or in Canada. But in terms of emission from peatlands, it shows a different result. Like based on this map, we can see that Indonesia emits the largest carbon, although tropical peatlands is only cover around 13% of the world's peatland. This is all because the large-scale deforestation or uncontrolled drainage for agricultural purpose, and also since it's in the tropical area, heat temperature also plays a role that drives the massive peat forest fire. So since we are aware that excessive drainage is the major cause of carbon emissions, another question come up, like, is there any way for agriculture in peatland could be more sustainable, or at least could minimize their environmental damage? And this is what we found. This is coconut plantation in Indragiri Hill Regency or Riau Province in Indonesia. The TGF has been studying this site for the past years. One of them is about the carbon balance. And our study result in this practice in this plantation has a positive carbon balance around 21 ton carbon per year. It also generates stable coconut productivity where it enables all the communities around this site to thrive. And also average subsidence is less than 2 centimeters for the past 32 years. The subsidence actually an important indicators about one of indicators regarding the sustainability level of the agricultural practice. But to achieve this kind of whole system, we firstly need a compatible land characteristic because not all peatland is suitable for agriculture, especially for regarding factors like peat decomposition levels or peat depth. Most of the peatlands are in fact should be dedicated for conservation zone. And we need rigorous water management in this site. The water management component consists of water gates, canals, dams, and dikes. It maintains the water table level as well as manage the water supply during the rainy season or drought season. So it managed to maintain the level where the crops can thrive, but in the lower emission level. And obviously, we need to practice burn-free cropping methods. Clearing peatlands with using fire has been prohibited by the Indonesian government, and the practice in this site is of course burn free, and we use this kind of biopeat to help the fertility level of the soil instead of fire. And to realize or to replicate or adopt the lesson learned from this site, we need long-term investment, and that's why the involvement of the government, industrial, or related stakeholders is needed to develop this kind of agricultural practice. Yeah. What I can conclude is this is actually the sustainability diagrams. On the top one, there is a balanced aspect of environment, social, and economic. But in this peatland case, I'd like to emphasize that we need to prioritize the environmental aspect first. Only when we can meet the environmental needs or maintain the environmental aspect, then we can learn or identify how to benefit from peatland for the social and economic aspect. And considering the global importance of the peatland ecosystem itself, that's why I can conclude that global sustainability requires proper peatlands management. Yeah, I think that was my brief presentation. I will get back to this forum later on. Yeah, it's time to get back to you, Noya.
Yeah, thank you, Zahara, for your very brief but I think comprehensive description and explanation about the issue that we want to discuss now, which is principally about peatland and its sustainability. And I'm just wondering, we can just start the discussion right now. And I'm just wondering for those who might be not very familiar with maybe the terminology or all the words, technical words that Zahara mentioned. I actually want to hear something from you, Rainer, that maybe represent the people that maybe not very familiar or not always following the issue about peatland. How do you find Zahara's explanation? And maybe we can start from the very first part, which is about how peatland is maybe, especially in Indonesia, is often exposed in the negative ways. Do you have any comment on that, Rainer?
Sure. Thank you so much, Noya. And thanks for the presentation, Zara. That was very interesting and sure gives us lots of ideas to discuss. Yeah, the general perception, the general public, of course, it's very difficult to summarize that. I have my own views and everything, but still, if I may, I'm a little bit unique because I'm working for an Indonesian think tank, but I'm actually not Indonesian, so I'm German. And I saw when you had the map with the regions of the world where there is peat, I see my area in green. That means I also come from a peat area in the north of Germany. And so when I grew up there, we knew about peat because over millions of years, the vegetation has basically gone into the ground with the wet land around it. And so we know that there is peat, and it was a traditional profession in my area that farmers would go and would cut that peat in order to burn it at home so that they would have warmth over the winter and would use it maybe to cook even, etc. So for us, peat was just a resource that people would be using on a daily basis. Nobody had heard of climate change, and it was not about climate change. It was just about, yeah, that's what you use in order to keep your house warm over winter. Or maybe also sometimes used for production processes, especially for those who love a good glass of whiskey. They would also have experience with peat. But anyway, so that's where I came from. And then I come to Indonesia, and then I see peat on an entirely different scale. I mean, this is far bigger than where I came from. And now it's all about climate change. So the whole public view has changed. And obviously also the way we use peat has changed. And it was when small little households cut a bit of peat here and there was still, using up a resource that was millions of years old. And it's therefore not a renewable source. But now we're using it on a different scale, and we are aware of all the effects on the climate. Now, I'm trying to give you the view now of a layman, and because Sara T, and also Zara are both the experts on peat, and I'm not. So now you get the public view, the general public, and here's a bit of a problem, because nowadays almost everybody considers themselves some sort of expert. We have about 7 billion coronavirus experts at the moment in the world because everybody knows everything about virus and vaccinations and everything, which is of course weird because only a few people really know. And so we need to be careful with peat. Not all people are experts. And so from the outside, it looks as if it was a simple thing. Just protect it, just don't use it. But it's not that simple, obviously. And I'm pretty sure during this event, we want to discuss it a bit more. And so the only thing we see is exactly the images that Zara shared earlier, so we see the fires, we know about that, we know about the orangutans, and it affects public views so much that just recently, maybe, 3 months ago, I think in March, Switzerland held a referendum. Switzerland in Europe, the country, they held a referendum whether they wanted to sign a trade agreement with Indonesia or not. So they had a yes campaign and a no campaign. And the yes campaign, the no campaign, those who did not want to have a trade agreement with Indonesia showed exactly these pictures. They showed exactly these pictures of a orangutan on a palm tree. So it was more about palm oil, but it's the same images of dying orangutans because they're losing their habitat. So nobody is saying this is wrong. These images are real, but we still need to get to slightly more differentiated views when we want to actually find a solution for these things. And it shows how the public view is dominated by this by now. And I thought that's why I wanted to share that with you. So public views are right now all focused on climate change, which is a good thing. We need to find the right solutions, but we require more in-depth discussion. And that's why this is a great event here.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Rainer, for sharing your view on this, because that's actually very interesting perspective. You are unique. You work for Indonesian organization for Indonesian community, but you are actually from Germany, and you mentioned before about how you see peat or peatland from your home country, and it's very different from what you see here in Indonesia. I think that's what you said before, right? And
Yes.
I actually talked about this with Sara before about how maybe the view on peatland, the issue about peatland in Indonesia and the global could be different or actually the same. Sara, Sara T, do you want to comment on that, please?
Yeah, so I have some slides as well, but I really like that introduction that Rainer gave to kind of place also his experience of peatlands. And for me, I was born in Finland, a country which has a lot of peat. I grew up in the Netherlands, another country which has a lot of peatlands. Then did my undergrad in Scotland, again, lots of peatlands. And then now, I've been working in Central Kalimantan with Borneo Nature Foundation and University of Leicester for 10 years. So Central Kalimantan, another location with a lot of peat. So for me, I find it, interesting looking at the conversations which we are having also globally around peatlands. And certainly Indonesia has had a growing focus, but there's also been a lot of in terms of research, temperate, and Arctic peatlands, we know a lot more about than tropical peatlands. Of course, with a rainforest and a peat swamp, that's very difficult, very challenging environments to do research in. So there's still a lot to learn about peatlands globally. And I think, the whole issue about sustainable use, sustainable management of peatlands, this is a global challenge. We're facing the same, discussions in peatlands in the UK of how to manage them properly and more sustainably, just as we are having discussions in Indonesia. And I do have a few slides, Noya. Would you like me to put them up and start that discussion, or how would you like
Yeah,
to
sure.
proceed? Yeah,
sure, please do, because I
so
believe
Zahara,
your slide will.
okay.
Great.
Yeah, so Zahara actually really started this off well. So thank you for that. You'll see a few of similar images, which I won't spend too much time on because Zahara has already covered them. Can you see my slides?
Yes, clearly, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so for me, I think it's also important when we have these conversations around peatlands, tropical peatlands as well in Indonesia, to look, as Zara already introduced, around the world and to situate this discussion as well, with this international focus, and also to talk a little bit more about the ecosystem and how it works. So why exactly is it in some ways, such a difficult ecosystem to manage, and why are we having, these issues like subsidence and fires? And so I want to spend a little bit of time on that. So yeah, global distribution, this has been already introduced. We've got many different types of peatlands around the world, northern and southern hemisphere. And what is peat and how does it form? Well, peat is organic matter. It's formed of dead plants. So in the northern hemispheres, of course, we don't have, tropical rainforests on them. It's formed that the plant matter is mainly from plants such as sphagnum mosses. And of course, then in the tropics, we have rainforests. So that's where all of this organic matter comes from, as well as, so that's trees, plants, as well as animals. And peatlands form in mainly waterlogged areas. These are areas with a lot of precipitation and or really poor drainage. And
Sara, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't think your slide is moving because yeah, because I think it's still on the title page.
Maybe you have to go to presentation mode.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see. Escape. Can you see? Oh no, I've stopped sharing now, haven't I? Let's see. I did go on presentation mode. Slideshow. Apologies. Let's try that again.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Can you see the screen changing now?
No, I don't think it's on the presentation mode because I can still see all the slideshows on the left.
Oh my gosh.
Will you try the button on the bottom of the page on the right-hand side?
Yeah.
Over here.
Yeah, that's the one.
Did that change?
No.
No.
Can you just click on the slides on the left-hand side? We can't quite see it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's
yeah,
just
that
do
works.
that.
That works.
Do that.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, as I said, Zara has already shown some of these images. Let me just, I'm trying to make it a little bit bigger for everyone. So yeah, peat, how does peat form and how does it accumulate? So as I was saying, peat forms in areas with really high water levels. So these are also areas with standing water. And this means that the water has low oxygen levels, which is key for later. So remember that, because these low oxygen levels means that the bacteria that is naturally in the soil, you find it in all soils, it doesn't have enough oxygen to fully decompose to break down that organic matter. And this is why peat, the plant matter builds up over thousands of years and eventually forms peat. This is why it's such an important store of carbon, because it is predominantly, it has really high levels of organic matter. And this, unfortunately, is what also leads to it being a massive source of carbon emissions if it's degraded. So just briefly how, peat degradation works. Well, it starts with, of course, in tropical peatlands, deforestation. So you take the original vegetation off. This means that it doesn't have that input of dead plants and plant material to, continue accumulating and forming peat. You also have the lowering of water table through the building of things like drainage canals. And as the water level drops, then the bacteria that previously did not have enough oxygen to break down the peat all of a sudden has access to more oxygen. So the bacteria then starts to decompose the peat itself through what is called aerobic decomposition. And this is what then leads to really high levels of carbon dioxide and carbon dioxide emissions, and also loss of the peat itself. So you see the lowering of the land surface through what is called subsidence. So hopefully that makes it a little bit clearer now what subsidence is and how it works. And this will, of course, continue until that new kind of level of water is reached. And subsidence is a really big problem, particularly for plantations and people growing crops on peatlands and living close to peatlands, because these can be really significant drops in the surface level. So in the first 5 years after drainage, the levels of subsidence can be a whopping like 1 to 2 meters per year. And this does stabilize to maybe about 3 to 5 centimeters per year, which might sound like not that much, but this equates to, after 25 years, subsidence levels of maybe, 2 to 3 meters. And so what this means is that many agricultural areas, not only in the tropics, but also across the temperate regions, we're finding the same problem, they will become prone to regular or even permanent flooding after only, 30 to 50 years. This means that whether they like it or not, a lot of plantation companies, if they are in this situation, they will eventually have to abandon their peat-based plantations or change their production systems completely. And this photo here is actually of a person in a peatland in the UK, a very famous fenland, and it shows this pole which has been inserted into the peatland 150 years ago, and you can just see just how that level, the peatland level, the land surface has decreased over that time. And I think it's probably around 4 meters, maybe a little bit more. And so, of course, global peatland degradation is a serious issue. It not only has local consequences, but also global consequences. It leads to massive carbon dioxide emissions. It's equivalent to 11.5% of all global fossil fuel emissions. And of course, when peatlands are drained, when they dry, they also become more likely to burn. And here, this is a photo in Palangkaraya, which I've spent many years in 2015, of course, during the fires there. And peatland degradation, again, it's all of these photos here are of significant peatland degradation or loss. So this is a global issue. What really distinguishes the Indonesian situation is the amount of people, the density, the population density living on and around Indonesian peatlands. So, for example, this image here in the bottom left, that is of a thawing permafrost peatland in the Arctic. This thawing permafrost is leading to people having to move away from their traditional villages in the northern hemisphere. Here, this is of peatland in the top right. That's Peatland Harvesting in the UK, which Rainer mentioned. This still happens, and I think, it was very recently that the UK decided to ban, I believe to ban this harvesting for the use in the horticultural industry. Peat compost is used for growing plants in greenhouses, and of course, this completely, over time, you remove the whole peatland surface. And this picture of fire, it's not an Indonesian peatland fire. It's one that happens in the UK. So peatland fires happen across the world. So I just wanted to clarify that. Of course, peatlands have become vulnerable through human actions. Whether this is direct, for example, through drainage, conversion to agriculture, or indirect through climate change. And in their natural state, they are robust ecosystems. They are adapted to, for example, these natural fluctuations of water levels between the seasons, and also, these nutrient poor conditions. This is actually what leads to the unique ecosystem and biodiversity, which I'll talk about a bit later on as well. And so for me, it's really about rethinking our own relationship to these and other environments. So it was great to see that a lot of people were actually choosing the word opportunity when thinking about peatlands, because ultimately, we have decided that they are suboptimal for the uses which we want to use them for. And we decide whether we want to talk about them in a negative or positive way and how we frame these issues. And ultimately, as with all ecosystems, peatlands are vitally important, both locally and globally. So that's what I wanted to add for now. And then we can talk a little bit more about some of those other topics later on.
Yeah, thank you, Sara, for the very brief but also very useful information, and you also have some data, some scientific facts to share with us. So I also want to invite the participant, if you already have some questions that you want to ask the panelists, to Zara, to Sara, or to Rainer, please write it on the chat box. you can just write it down and we will take a note of it and then we can discuss it later. So yeah, please do that. And yeah, before we continue, I also want to comment on a lot of things from your presentation, Sara, because I also agree with most of the things, if not all the things that you mentioned about how peatland is indeed exposed in negative ways, because unfortunately the current situation is like that. But also I'm actually very grateful for the people who are joining us now, as you said before, that thinking peatland is now about opportunity. It's not always associated with the negative things, as you mentioned. Although we now have the utilization of peatland in the UK and in like the temperate area, that is basically they are harvesting the peat soil, right? And then basically just eroding all the peat soil. And then in Indonesia we also have not only in Indonesia but in globally we have also like peat and land fires. But it's not all that. We still have the things to make it better, to make it more sustainable. And I actually want to hear some comments, maybe from Rainer first or from Zahara, about what Sara just shared, because I believe you guys also have some comments or maybe input on that. Maybe we can start with Zahara. Do you want anything to say for now?
Yeah, thank you, Noya, and thank you, Sara, for the presentation. Yeah, I also agree that peatland in Indonesia is can be distinguished from others because yeah, in terms of population that live in that area, there are like a lot, like thousands. In fact, in my research site in that district of Pulau Burung, there are like more than 10,000 people who live in this area. So it will be it won't be that easy to just protect it or make a conservation effort without neglecting the needs of people who live there. And as for I also agree about that we should look more into opportunities about how the way we utilize or conserve this kind of peatland. And the term when we decide that peatland is suboptimal, actually it comes from our perspective that naturally in the natural state, peatlands it is not suboptimal. It's not suboptimal because it can grow their native species and it also can support a healthy ecosystem. But when the agricultural practice come with poor drainage or poor water management, it changed the landscape of peatland and hence it caused the suboptimal land state of the peatland itself. And that's why we want to find a way where we can actually have a responsible utilization of this damaged peatland itself. Yeah, I think I will comment again later on. That's all for now.
Okay. How about you? Thank you, Zahara. How about you, Rainer? Do you have maybe any comments after hearing the presentation about the peatland issue, not only in Indonesia but also globally?
Maybe just a very quick one, because I think Zahara has commented on Sara all the things that I also had on mind on. She understands the subject better. It just reminds me, the term suboptimal reminds me of what we also talk about is the jungle. I mean, it's the rainforest, which is also a very suboptimal soil. I mean, this is probably one of the most unfertile soils you can get in the jungle. And people still go in and cut the forest and still use it for agriculture, even though it is also somewhat suboptimal and use it only for a short period of time. So just because it's suboptimal doesn't stop people from using it, because as both experts have already explained, there are people whose livelihood depend on it. And so we need to find ways. And I guess that's going to be subject of our further discussion, right?
Yeah, that's true, because now I also want us everyone here to focus on the good things, on the opportunity that we've been mentioning already, and I believe most of you, the participants here, also associate peatland with opportunity. So I believe Zara, and also Reina actually have mentioned some good things about peatland, because of course peatland, as suboptimal as it is, because of course it actually because of the human, a lot of good things came out from peatland, right? And maybe to describe more and to explain more about these good things about peatlands, I want to ask again you, Sarah, about what actually the good things about peatland. How should we refocus our attention so that we can shift this like negative view into the positive view about peatland?
Yeah, great. I've got some more slides. I actually really find the word suboptimal a bit challenging to accept. But so let me I'm going to also spend some time to talk about peat swamps.
Okay.
So yeah, tropical peatlands as well, but well, they are tropical peatlands. But let me share my screen and let's spend a few minutes on the original vegetation of tropical peatlands. Let's see. My apologies for all of these difficulties getting to my slides. We'll see if it, oh no, here we go. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Yeah, can you see my slides? Okay, great. So yeah, these are photos of tropical peat swamps. So I spent almost 2 years living in Sabangao peat swamp forest. And you know, tropical peatlands are unique habitats. To me, they are absolutely beautiful. They have this stunning red water, which contrasts amazingly against, you know, the bright green vegetation of the forest. And they are, you know, the water is this color because of all the organic materials, you know, that fallen leaves and dead plants that are accumulating in this low oxygen water. And this releases what is called tannins and other chemicals which turn the water this dark color, in case you don't know why it's that color. And it's basically the same process as putting a tea bag in hot water, and you know, your tea turning that dark color. It's the same, you know, tannins are also found in tea. And this also makes the peat swamps relatively nutrient poor, and the water very acidic. So it tends to be a pH less than 4, which is pretty much the same acidity as orange juice, which to me is amazing. And these unique characteristics and conditions are what make the tropical peat swamp forest and its, you know, fauna and its flora have all of these amazing adaptations to basically survive in these challenging environments. So you see, you know, in trees, you have these stilt roots, you have these pneumatophores, which reach out from below the water so that the tree can get oxygen and yeah, respire. And then of course the stilt roots also support the tree in the unstable peat soil. And because, again, peat soils, as we know, they're low in nutrients, plants have found other ways of getting the nutrients which they need. And in this case, in the case of the nepenthes, they have turned carnivorous, which is super cool. And then, of course, you have really amazing animal diversity, which comes with this unique forest. You have, of course, the orangutan, which is well known. You have other threatened species such as the clouded leopard. You also have a great variety of reptiles and amphibians. And one of my favorite is this stunning blue-green pit viper that we often come across in the forest. And in order to be able to survive that acidic, low oxygen water, you also find a whole variety of special fish species. Many can breathe air, like the catfish, and you will also find fish species that can only be found in one specific swamp. So there are extremely high levels of specialization and endemicity. And of course, these fish are also important for local communities who, particularly those who depend on fishing as a source of livelihood and food. And as has been already said as well, peatlands are also important for their water purification, water regulation, and through regulating water flows, they help minimize the risk of flooding. And across Southeast Asia, millions of people depend on peatlands for their livelihoods. And peatland livelihoods are very diverse. It doesn't just include agriculture, of course, but it includes also fishing in peat swamps and peatland rivers. So for example, around central Kalimantan and across Kalimantan, an important source of protein is fishing. So in one of the villages, which I've been working with for over years, you know, fish, I think it's something like over 90 to 95% of the village depends on fishing for their livelihood. And of course, for that to be possible, you need healthy forests and you need healthy rivers. And then you also have, of course, some examples of ecotourism. You have Borneo Nature Foundation is also trying out community reforestation projects. And so peatland conservation and restoration projects can, and they also should, provide livelihood opportunities for local communities as well. So that's what I wanted to just briefly talk about in that case, and I'll hand it over back to you again.
Yeah, thank you, Sara. So I think what you just shared about the good thing about peatland is basically its ecosystem services, right?
Yes. Yeah. Because if that helps you, I mean, for me, again, I'll talk a little bit. I'll mention about this as well. But ecosystem services, yeah, it's about how the benefits which we get from the environment, but also the relationships to which we have. It's a lot more complicated. You know, these relationships are two-way, especially when we look at livelihoods like fishing and things. So yeah, these are, some would call them ecosystem services.
Yeah, one way to call it the ecosystem services. True. Yeah, I want to ask the other panelists, but we actually already have some questions in the chat. And I think also because we are now talking about like the good things about peatland and how the last thing you mentioned is about like the livelihoods. And as you mentioned before, Sara, it's very diverse how people depend their life on peatland, not only about agriculture, but also like the fishing, maybe aquaculture, and I believe also like the recreational and then the social aspects of people. Actually, some of them relate to peatland, right? Yeah. So I think I want to because I think maybe there's a question from Beria Leimona. She asked, I believe this is related to the presentation that you just shared, Sara, because you also mentioned about peatland, especially in its pristine situation, in its pristine condition. It's like very robust and thriving ecosystem, right? And that's made me also wonder, how about the restoration? What kind of effort that the related stakeholders actually made to achieve that, to be closer to this robust and thriving ecosystem? And also in the chat box, Beria Leimona also asked what commitments made by, she mentioned private sectors, so especially private sector in conserving peatland maybe there are some cases, not only from Indonesia, maybe Rainer and also Sara can also share about cases about this from the foreign countries. And what challenge for, I believe, PPP is People, Planet, Profit, if I'm not mistaken. Please, Miss, I guess, Miss Beria, if I'm wrong, then please correct
It's
myself.
private-public partnership.
Okay, private. I believe it's not people private profit, but yeah, private public partnership. Thank you, Ms. Feria. And what challenges for PPP on this peatland conservation? Yeah, I think that's the first question. And maybe Sara or Zara, do you want to, because this is quite specific to peatland, do you have any answer for this question?
Yeah, so those are quite a few questions. I'll give my best shot at answering them, and then maybe Zara can complete what I add. So in terms of restoration, so also to clarify, once a peatland is drained, it becomes a lot harder to re-wet it. It also becomes even more harder to then reforest it. So peatland restoration is a really challenging thing to do, and we're really only in the start of understanding how to basically do it, and if it's possible. So of course we have the Indonesian government. We've got the BRGM, which has been working trying to on their peatland restoration, working with also different stakeholders, communities, and also on peatland restoration across Indonesia. And I think they managed to reach, that has now been extended for the next 4 years, from my understanding. So that's the Peatland Restoration Agency. Then you also have, of course, organizations like the Borneo Nature Foundation that has been working for many years on different trials of restoration outside of the forest, for example, in burned areas. So there's definitely, and there's many more projects. There's a lot of people trying to figure out how to restore tropical peatlands and to re-wet them as well. And in terms of private sectors in conserving peatlands, maybe Zara, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah. Well, in terms of private sectors, I believe the Indonesian regulation required the companies who own the plantation to dedicate some of their concession for conservation purpose. Other than that, in terms of agricultural practice, the government also made a regulation related to the minimum peatland water table. So the draining is not so the water table depth is not so low. So it requires the plantation to maintain the high water table so that the oxidation process in the peat soil could be minimized. And other than that, in terms of cropping methods, the company has been working with BPPT, it's like government agency, to have a research in creating organic fertilizer that can increase the peat fertility so that the crops can grow, and not using because traditionally people tend to use fire. They just burn the fire to increase the peat fertility, but today that kind of methods has been prohibited. So the companies and the government working together to find the kind of organic fertilizer to help the crops grow. And in terms of PPP, the challenge are, I think, for the public in this context is community or smallholder farmers in the peatland plantation areas. I think the challenge are for smallholder farmers to properly manage the peatland of their own plantation. It will be hard without water management system that only can be developed by the company, because it requires a lot of investment to build such water system. And it also, I think, for the PPP scheme, government can help the smallholder farmers to practice a more sustainable agriculture system, starting with crops like polyculture. But of course, the challenge for polyculture is finding the marketing network to actually, when the polyculture get their harvest, they have to market the product. But today, the market for such polyculture product is not widely available yet. So I think this is the kind of challenge that PPP can help to help the farmers.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah and Zara, for the opinions. And you mentioned about policy regulation and the stakeholder cooperation. I would love to hear from Rainer, because I think what you've done with CIPS is also mostly about, the regulation and policy, and also how to connect with the relevant stakeholders. Do you have maybe experience about not always peatland, but like land use management, how to connect all these very diverse yet relevant stakeholders to actually managing or regulating this land sustainably? If you have any comment on that, Rainer.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Noya. Indeed, I mean, that's an area that our think tank is really working on, not on peat issues, but in general on public policy solutions. And we need to be realistic when we talk about the situation. When we say the government, that in itself does not really exist. So there are central government agencies, some of them Sara just mentioned, that have their capacities, but also limited capacities. And then we of course have the provincial and the district governments. So it requires really for us to look at the specific situation. The situation in Kalimantan might be very different from situations in Sumatra, etc. So we need to look at the specific situation there, and then look at and assess the capacities, especially the local governments are very different in their capacities across the country. So I would say when I listen to the discussion, I'm thinking, first of all, maybe you could mute. Yeah, thank you. So the question to me is like, who is degrading the peatland? So who is really the actor that causes a lot of harm? So that we can see where's the solution to this. And if we see that these are actors that are actually busy on the national level, or at least have national importance, maybe the central government should really step in and come up with certain solutions. And that might include, as Zahara was saying, this conservation area. So sometimes we cannot ignore human interest. So we need to find solutions that allow a certain level of economic use, but then we also want to preserve in a reasonable manner some core areas of the peatland. So that's a difficult decision to make. Has to be scientifically supervised, obviously. So we're not like taking a bit, but that bit is actually killing the entire peat. So we need to make sure that this is done in a reasonable manner. But I believe this is important when we talk about plantations, when we talk about large corporations using peatland. That requires a certain set of answers. And we see this in many areas of the world where you would see that companies get the concession. The government gives it to them with a special condition that they have to fulfill certain conditions. And that could have to do with conservation. But the problem is quite often the governments don't have the enforcement capability. And therefore one has to look very skeptically whether this is actually possible or not and can lead to the results that one desires. And this is just on the question of who is causing the degradation. The next level would be the local communities. So in their way, they contribute as well to the degradation, obviously, maybe not on the scale, but they do. And that could also include invasive species that they're bringing in, they're introducing other animals, other plants, etc. So there might be things that they are doing unintentionally, but this also can have consequences. So we need to look at that as well. So I believe an answer really needs to lie in that private initiative. And when I say private, it could be individual. We have quite often seen in the world that some person with a huge heart and the desire to actually preserve something can have actually quite a large effect. We have seen that in islands around Mauritius, where one person has really helped to preserve certain species over there in many parts of the world. And in Java, we have wonderful initiatives to protect the songbirds. That's a huge crisis in Indonesia, the Songbird Crisis, because Indonesians love their birds in cages, and now they're all dying. So here we see individual initiative that makes a huge difference. But then we have the organizations, and Sara is obviously working with the Borneo initiative there. And I think these groups have a huge impact because they really see how to protect the peatland or the environment by giving the communities the opportunity to still make a living there. So not excluding them, but including them. And that we have seen all over the world. If you look at Africa, the conservation efforts all over Africa, there are a few big exceptions like Serengeti or so. But if you look at the smaller parks, quite often they are privately managed. Quite often they have some revenue model in there. This is usually tourism, which is in Indonesia massively underdeveloped. Sometimes it's hunting, which we don't like. But it can bring in the revenue to actually sustain the species that we have in these environments. So and this is then done in a way to manage this for the greater good. So just to finish this, in Indonesia we have done studies on community forestry, which is quite related in a way. It's entirely different ecosystems, but is related. And we can see how the whole problem of deforestation can be addressed if the communities get the right to manage their own resources. We have seen that also in coral protection in the maritime sector in some parts of Indonesia. But in what we did, the study was in Central Java. So we looked at villages that wanted to protect their forests. And so how did they do that? They basically, and that's the most important part, they got the right, the formal legal right to the fruits of the forest, which in legal terms is called the usufructuary right. So it's a certain type of property rights. So they don't own the forest; it's still owned by the government, by the state, but they can use the forest, and that means they can actually take benefits from it. They can collect wood without cutting it. They can maybe follow the bees and get the honey from the bees. They can get fruit and other things that grow in the forest. So they can actually make use of that. And that would be the same in the peatlands, that some benefits can be taken either by tourism also. And we've seen and studied in CIPS that the local communities have a huge benefit if they get that right. They can, like we have one study and one in a village in Central Java where they formed a little company. And then in the company, they decided basically all the villagers had different roles. Some would provide the bed and breakfast. The others would be the guides. The third ones would take care of the public lavatories. The third one would be the drivers, and so on and so forth. So, and some of little warungs for food, etc. So on average, they had an income increase of $190, which is a lot of money for people in Central Java. By doing this, they brought in the tourists. The tourists went up the mountains. They were able to see the sunrise over the volcanoes of Java. So it's a beautiful scenery. which would be gone if it's deforested. And we have the same. I've done my trips to Palangkaraya. I've been on those orangutan feeding stations, and what I loved was not the orangutans. They are nice, but what I loved was the small stuff, all the beautiful insects that live there, the plants, as the photos from Sara, just so wonderful. If that is really put into a better marketing concept, you would have more people visiting. The local people would understand that that habitat means money. They can really live off that. They can make a lot of money by just showing people, putting them on boats and let them take photos of all these beautiful things. There's a lot of room for improvement for that. And we've seen countless cases around the world how that worked. Sorry, it was maybe a little long, but I'm quite passionate about that subject.
Yeah, because I also asked about something very general, and I believe the regulation and the policy part is, as you mentioned, if we always usually if someone answer about the regulation and policy is about the government, and as you mentioned, maybe the one thing that we need to remind ourselves is about like not only about the government but all the stakeholders maybe have like a limited enforcement capacity. That's what I really get from your from your explanation, that might be this limited capacity is like making them as a challenge to have this kind of cooperation among the stakeholders. I guess that's what you mean.
That's right. Allow me one more sentence, Maya, just one more sentence.
Okay.
And that is, if you, I mean, quite often we talk about these things, but we live in the cities. We have nothing to do with these places.
True.
So for us, we want to put a fence around it, and that means we have protected it. But when you live there, you need this. And when the tree or the forest or everything next to your village is not yours, you don't own anything of that. And you have no more income, what do? You go at night. You have to exploit it, because that's how you make your money. So we need to put ourselves in their shoes.
Yeah, true. That you just mentioned it just now with your some cases that you work on, and Sara also have highlights on that about how we should include. We have to be inclusive for the, especially like the beneficiaries, the local people, the local communities that actually live on the landscape. And in this context, then the peatland area, that is the one that making it very complex, because human are like complex human being, and then it really depends on the cases. It really depends on where, on what, on the why, the reason or the background of this specific the management of the area. I think that's how I will wrap the opinions from the panelists here, because actually from this discussion I also want to ask about the big question itself about sustainability, because I believe some of the questions in the chat box also mentioning a lot about the sustainability, the dimension, the components about the sustainability. And I personally believe that sustainability is one thing, but it can be interpreted or it can be defined differently from people to people. And just Rainer just mentioned now about us maybe thinking sustainability is like this, but for people living in specific area, then we don't know their perspective. We don't know how they actually see the landscape and connect themselves to the environment, to the nature. So with that in mind, I also want to ask all the panelists here about how would you define sustainability? I know this is a very general and broad question, but how would you define sustainability and relate this to the land use management in general, or maybe peatland, if you have already want to share something about peatland and sustainability? Maybe we can start with Sara first.
Yeah, great. I've got a few slides, which I'll try again. Let's see if it works. There we go. Yeah, so sustainability. I mean, as we've been talking, like sustainability, means very different things to many different people, and to me, it's really taking a step back and thinking more widely, not just in Indonesia, but in general. When we're thinking about sustainability, it's really about rethinking also how we relate to our environment. we aren't separate from nature or our natural environment, whatever you want to call it. We depend on it, and we are in constant relations with it. And so conservation and restoration, we need to also see it as being beneficial to all life. We aren't only restoring peatlands for peatlands or for orangutans or any other biodiversity. We are also we have to be restoring it for people as well. And humans, we thrive in healthy environments. Everyone wants to live in a nice landscape that doesn't experience fires every year. So for me, it's really about thinking more about like happy, healthy lives. What does this mean for, ourselves personally? What does this mean for peatland communities? What do people need to live those happy, healthy lives? And it also requires living in happy, healthy environments. And when it comes to livelihoods, it's not just about making money. It's about how we make our living, how we are living. How are we also contributing to the ecosystems and the communities that we are a part of? So it's a lot broader, that we need to think about. It's not just monetary income. Of course, we're in the systems we are part of. Everyone has to earn a living, but happy lives is a lot more than that. So this also, of course, as everyone has been saying, this is why we need to understand local realities, and what people, local needs, what are the challenges which different communities are facing, and really these more bottom-up approaches to then design appropriate policies and management, whether that is in peatland areas or in other areas as well. Because if we don't, we can then find really unintended consequences. So one example which I wanted to just highlight is, from the fire bans in Central Kalimantan, I've heard a lot of negative unintended consequences where the fire ban, people use it to, for example, deal with pests, or as I think Zahara mentioned, also to increase, short-term the nutrients in their areas, and also to clear lands. As the cheapest way to do that, to then prepare it for planting. And for some people, the fire ban can have very negative livelihood impacts. And so then, they're also less likely to follow it. So that's also a problem. And so you need to find, realistic alternatives to then using fire, and really understanding what the challenges are that people are facing. And any alternative livelihoods have to be, again, realistic and location specific. There really is, in my opinion, not one magical fix that is going to work for all peatlands across Indonesia, because you have situations, for example, like coastal shallow peatlands versus inland deeper peatland areas. Those are very different environments, and they will require very different approaches. And then also, for example, take polludiculture. That's an approach that started in Europe, and the approach which we take in Indonesia will probably have to look very different to that, because, for example, in Europe, from my understanding, the farmers using polludiculture are also being very heavily subsidized and supported by the government, and that Indonesian farmers may not have the same access to government support. So we need to also be careful with trying to transplant ideas from one peatland system, which is very different, to another. And again, once deforested, tropical peatlands are not functioning peatlands anymore. They will not be accumulating a lot of peat anymore. And so if they are drained or they have lowered water tables, even if this is managed, this will still lead to degradation, subsidence, and related carbon emissions. So whether we are talking about truly, is it really sustainable long term, or are we minimizing carbon emissions? It's fine if it's just minimizing carbon emissions. That's very important, actually. I shouldn't be using the word just there. But we also really need to be clear with what we are talking about. So to me, I also see sustainability as more of a journey rather than an end point. I don't know if, you know, sustainable peatland agriculture, if that even exists. Maybe it does, which would be great. But, you know, for now, we need to be pushing to more sustainable practices, not only in Indonesia, but elsewhere as well, in the UK too. And yeah, then hopefully we start moving in the right direction, which is what we want. And yeah, just to clarify that, you know, so it's really important that the remaining peat swamp forests are not deforested and or drained. And of course, we need to link this to supporting local livelihoods, like the BRGM's approach of revitalizing livelihoods. I would add to their 3Rs approach also reducing fire, which my colleagues here would agree with. And yeah, we probably need a mix of different livelihood options in different peatlands. So maybe this could include aquaculture, maybe it can include different forms of polludiculture. But as Zara also, or was it Noya? Apologies. As was previously talked about, you know, it's also an issue of like trying to figure out whether there are markets for different products and how do different crops relate to food security. A tree crop probably won't support improved food security and things like that. And will options really lead to an improvement in people's lives, or just increasing their income by a small percentage? So there's still a lot to learn. And of course, we need proper engagement and co-production of knowledge with peatland communities, because ultimately it is, you know, it's the people who have been living their whole lives on peatlands who are the experts on peatland livelihoods. So we need to be working in a collaborative way, of course, with those communities who know best what the situation is. And I also really, this is why events like this are great, because I look forward to hearing more about the projects of Thai Juhana Foundation and also CIPS and other organizations and so many others across Indonesia, because hopefully, you know, we can build collaborations and learn from each other so that we can, you know, find realistic solutions and options for Indonesia's peatland areas. So back to you, Noya.
Yeah. Thank you, Sara, for the slides, for the beautiful slide. I really agree with the very last part of your presentation about there are still a lot to learn, especially if we talk about peatland and how it's very unique and exceptional and very different from one peatland ecosystem to another. And I also love about how you say sustainability is not it's not the end, it's more like a journey. That's very resonate with me. And I wondered also about the other panelists. How about you, Zara? How would you define sustainability? I would love to hear from you.
Yeah, to me, yeah, just like Sara mentioned, there's no exact definition of what sustainability is. It's highly related to different location, different contexts, and different people. But the bottom line is, I believe what's more important is our effort to achieve that sustainability, or that kind of state that we believe is indicators for sustainability. And related to my work, I put more concern on how to sustain or minimizing the damage or the negative impact from the current practice, because yeah, you're right, we all still need a lot to learn to to define or to achieve the kind of ideal state where everything like economic or social environment could be three aspects that could achieve balance on each other. So yeah, I think it's more about what we can do today to sustain or to preserve or to minimize the negative impacts. So the landscape or particularly the peatland areas could be we can benefit from that kind of land in a longer term, not degraded immediately or even causing a larger catastrophe.
All right. Thank you, Zara, for your opinion. So I believe you also mentioned earlier in the discussion about how this sustainability dimension, which is the human, the socio-economic, and also the nature, the environmental, should be balanced. That's the ideal situation. That how we balance that in peatlands may be different. In one peatland to another might be different, right? As you mentioned before. So yeah, thank you for the opinion. And lastly from Rainer, I know that you already have highlighted a lot of things from your previous explanation, especially about how we should put ourselves in the shoes, in the local people and local community shoes. And I believe maybe you might have something to add about how you have the view about sustainability from your perspective. Please, Rainer.
I believe Indonesia's population is growing so quickly. So if I think of sustainability, I'm thinking of firefighting, and I'm not talking about peatland fires. So, you know, if you grow from 270 to 300 million in a very short period of time, these people are more and more connected because infrastructure is growing rapidly, which is a good thing. But that means we are reaching all corners of the country by now very easily. And that means we expand all over the place. And if these places are not of immediate use, we will change these places. We will drain the swamps, we will cut the forests. If there's no use, we will do that because we as humans, we need to live somehow. So this expansion will happen and will kill the environment. I don't see how this can be prevented unless we ensure that these resources that are there are actually can be monetized, can be used for people. And monetized, I know it's not only about money, but it's a lot about livelihood. So I'm not talking about big profits. I'm talking about people making a living. And for that, I really believe we need peatland tourism, which I believe is not existing. I mean, when I went to see the orangutans, I actually didn't know I'm ending up in peatland. I didn't know. I knew I was on little canals and I knew, or rivers, and I knew I was seeing the orangutans in the forest. Had no idea I was in a peatland. And in the end, I found that more attractive than the orangutans. But where is a peatland tourism operator in this country that brings people from Jakarta, Surabaya, and Makassar and all the big cities into the peatlands? It's not happening. And if that is not happening, then people will drain the peatlands because they're not giving us any benefit in our expansion. So I think that to me is the key thing. And for that, we need journalists to write about it. We need operators, tourism operators. We need local communities to help set up little bed and breakfast places, etc. Nothing fancy at the beginning. All of this needs to happen and soon, because otherwise I don't see the incentive to preserve the peatlands.
Okay, yeah, thank you for your opinion, Rainer. Because it is interesting indeed, because we as a country, Indonesia has a vast peatland regions, but yeah, I don't think we have like an official peatland tourism regions yet. I believe like in Riau, in Kalimantan Selatan, and a lot of provinces, there are actually how to say tourism destination that is located and make use of peatland ecosystem, but it's not yet trending on using that trending like peatland tourism. While as you mentioned before, also Sara mentioned before, how we can actually refocus, rebrand peatland. The good things about peatland is not always agriculture. It's not always like plantation or industry. It's also those kind of things like tourism, where we can expose, we can highlight the ecosystem as it is, like the small things, like the insects, the special fish that you can only found in peatland. That's very beautiful thing. Thank you, Rainer. And I also want to go back to the chat box because we have a lot of question already, and there are two questions. This is more specific about peatland because one thing that relevant the most with peatland is the water resource, the water situation in the landscape. There are some technical question about how in Indonesia, because Sara and Zara also mentioned about the bad impacts about drainage in like agricultural peatland agriculture is the one thing that really hamper everything is the drainage. And I think the government and also a lot of people already know that and realize that we need to do something about that. And one of the effort is to construct a block canals and a lot of infrastructure or structure to retain the water in the peatland itself. But then, in fact, there are still peat fires or forest fire happening, even though the efforts to build more and more block canals are being done in so many peatland provinces in Indonesia. Uh, how would you say about this situation? Do you think the block canals is actually the solution to help fighting the forest fire, the peat forest fire, or do you have any other solution to fight the peat forest fire in Indonesia? Maybe I can start with Zara and then after that with Sara.
Okay. It's very technical. In terms of canal blocking, that could be a solution. Well, it actually depends on the site location itself, depends on the landscape, and it also depends on the purpose of what do you want to achieve by blocking the canals. For example, in the restoration effort or conservation, blocking canals is needed, of course, to retain the water content or the water table on the peatland area, so that it will prevent the peat drainage on that site itself. But in some cases, some of the canal blocking might not be working because maybe the soil condition is too degraded, so it will be hard to restore the peat condition even after the canal blocking has done. So every time you want to do that kind of canal blocking, I think you should be able to conduct the feasibility studies first to see how the impact of the canal blocking will be achieved, will be it beneficial, or maybe you can find other solution or beside the canal blocking. For example, you can increase the vegetation or forest cover in that area. But of course, if you want to, the main purpose of what you want to achieve is restoration or conservation, canal blocking is part of the main activities that you can do to achieve that.
Okay, thank you, Zara, for your answer. Do you have anything to add, Sara? Because I believe I saw something on your slide before about this.
Yeah, so first of all, the fire, peatland fire, and the situation with peatland fires is really complex. So So when we look at, so in degraded peatland areas which are deforested, so once the peat dries, it actually becomes hydrophobic, which means that it repels water. And that means that it becomes a lot harder to re-wet, which is why it's really important to keep peatlands wet and not let them dry out in the first place. But once that happens, and drainage canals have been built, for example, the first thing to do to try and increase the water tables is to build these blocks, these dams in the canals to block up the drainage. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean that the peatland itself becomes immediately wet. It takes a lot of time to re-wet peatland area and to increase that water table. So in the meantime, that dried peat may very well, burn if it is, set on fire. So reforestation comes a lot later. That already needs the peat itself to be re-wetted. And the peat fires have a lot of, first of all, there's different types of peat fires. You have deeper peat fires. You also have surface fires. So if the peat itself isn't, if it has 40 centimeter of the surface itself is still dry, that can still burn. And if it's got any vegetation, any dried grass, of course that can also burn and then spread to other areas. If the peat itself, which is a smoldering fire, if that starts deeper in the soil, then that of course becomes really hard to extinguish. It can continue for months, which we know in Indonesian peatlands, and be very difficult to control. So once the peatland fire starts, it's not only that it starts, it's also that it can spread, and it's difficult to control and to extinguish. So canals are definitely the first step. The problem with canals, dams, sorry. Dams and canals are definitely the first step. The problem with damming canals is that in some cases it also is seen as a negative impact on local communities. Once canals have been in the area for many years, people start using them for transport and for fishing and things like that. So they might not necessarily be very happy that dams are being built. And so there has to be another level of working with communities again and understanding their needs, and finding a solution that actually works. Because for example, in Sabanga Forest, where canals were built to transport timber out of the forest, one of the main reasons that dams fail is because they're broken, because these the canals are being used by fishers and others. And so it's not just an easy solution to go and build a dam in a canal. You need to work with the local community. You need to do a lot more work than just building the dam. And of course, the situation with the massive peatland fires is because there are still very large areas of degraded peatland. So in central Kalimantan, for example, you have the former mega rice project area, which is still really dry, degraded peatland. Outside of Sabanga Forest, you also have areas of degraded peatland because of previous fires. And unfortunately, once a peatland burns once, it's a lot easier and more likely for it to burn again. So it becomes this really, this feedback loop, which just continues getting worse and worse unless restoration efforts are started. So that probably doesn't answer the whole question, but it's the fire situation in peatlands are hugely complicated for not only the environmental characteristics of peat, but also social and economic aspects as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the answer, Zahara and Sara. And I think the highlight is that it's not the question about is building canal blocking is the right thing to do or not, but as Sara just mentioned, now it's about like the other effort that should follow this canal blocking, right? Because in some context, in some location, maybe blocking the channel is not the answer because the community is already using that, so it's not a very wise thing to do. But in other place, maybe it is the right step, the right first step to do. But of course, how to say, the peat fires indeed a very complex thing. So it's like blocking the canals is only the first step, and there are a lot of steps that should be followed. I think that's the how to summarize it. And unfortunately, because of the time limitation, we will only answer one more question, and I believe maybe this can be answered by Rainer, because the question from Najla is about how to create an ecosystem, a peatland, or maybe the other ecosystem that puts forward the concept of environment, sustainability, and governance that targeted for sustainable development goals and restoration. And I think you've partly answered that because you mentioned about, like, for example, peatland tourism with a lot of details that you mentioned before. But maybe if you can share more about those kind of example that highlight the concept of environment sustainability and governance, you can please share with us, Rainer.
I believe there are a lot of investors that would be willing to jump if there was a project that's really worthwhile. So, I mean, I'm not talking about large investors. I'm talking about relatively small ones. But I have seen so many social impact investors in Indonesia that are willing to pick up interesting projects, as long as there are groups that have a good business plan and they know what they want to do. So I think a lot of things can be done. It really requires, again, initiatives like those that Sara is working with in Borneo to just help develop groups and give them the business plans so that they can become attractive to investors. I have been involved in a project where it came to fisheries, and it was the same question. How can the fishing communities basically come up with interesting business plans so that they can actually benefit from their produce and not just become a supplier of little goods that go into a value chain where in the end some supermarket owner in Europe makes the biggest benefit. So we want to make sure the local communities are the ones that are benefiting, and that requires this knowledge. So I believe these initiatives that help the communities to come up with these business ideas, I'm sure there will be, and then like organizations like mine and others, we can connect them to these social impact companies and investors who are willing to then give them the seed funding to take it from there. So I think there is room for that.
Yeah. So I believe the networking is very crucial part to actually connect each other, all the relevant stakeholders, the one with the idea, the one with the business plan, the one with the financial support, right? To actually realize something, like make actionables that actually can be implemented in the landscape, right? Yeah. So yeah. Again, I want to say sorry because of the time limitation. I really believe that there are a lot of questions still about our discussion, and this is also not a very conclusive discussion, I might say, with the amazing panelists here, because we have talked about the peatland from the scientific part of it, and also the social part of it, how us as a human is actually have a lot of effect on the peatland ecosystem, which is in itself ecosystem that also include the human. And also about the sustainability, which is not conclusive at all, because again, it's not wrong to have like a different definition of sustainability. But again, the good intention is what we want to highlight for now. And yeah, the discussion is finished for now, but you can always ask in the chat box. You can visit our website, Thai Juhana Foundation, and the social media, and you can also maybe ask the panelists here. But now I actually want to continue with the quiz because I believe we have learned a lot of things from this discussion, and to conclude with this event, I believe that a quiz is a very proper thing to do to at least check whether you guys, the participant, understand or get something out from this event.
Can
So
I just quickly interrupt you, Noya? I'm so sorry,
Yes.
but I will need to leave because I have another.
Oh yeah,
thing
true.
If you don't mind, I'm stepping out at this moment.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Okay.
much for having me.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, true. I forget about that. But thank you,
No
Rainer,
worries.
for having us. And then I hope we can see you again in another event.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Rainer leaving us now, but I hope Sara and Zara will still be here and then will be with us until the very end. So yeah, for the quiz, I invite all of you to join, all of you in the Zoom room to join. Also the speakers, also the panelists can join this quiz. But I'm not sure if maybe you guys will win. The prize might not be for you, but for the other winner. So yeah, please for everybody who is still in the room, you can go to www.menti.com and enter this code, or on the link that is written on the chat box already, you can just click it. Yeah. Let me. And also maybe if someone is in the YouTube, in our YouTube, you can also check. You can also click on the link or just go to menti.com and enter the code. And please input the username that you want to use in this quiz. We will have 5 questions, and then this is a matter of not only right or wrong, but also who answer right the fastest. So the faster you answer, you will get more points, and it became like greater opportunity for you to win. Okay, so I will wait for more people to join us. So yeah, if anyone haven't yet joining the Menti room, please just click the link that is available in the Zoom chat box, or go to menti.com and enter the code 21031915. The quiz will be started after you enter your username. So if anyone opening this menti.com using their second device, you can of course see the screen, the Zoom screen, and then the question and also the choices that you have in your second device. But if you log into menti.com using the same device you open the Zoom, then you can just minimize the Zoom and hear my voice. Meanwhile, you can focus on the menti.com screen, so you can participate better. Okay, I think more than half of people is already joining. Yeah, so I would love to start the quiz now, and then later on, if there are any of you maybe a bit late or something to this quiz, then you can always rejoin, and then yeah, based on your luck, you can join in the second or maybe third question and see if you can still win this quiz. So okay, I will start now. The first question is this. The following are vital in the formation of peat, except you have 4 options. And please answer now. Which one do you think the right answer? Okay, so apparently only 9 people answer. I'm not sure if the time countdown is too fast or not, but then yeah, only 4 people actually get the right answer, which is the excellent drainage is not the vital one in the formation of peat. If you remember from Sara beautiful slide before, because if you remember, the formation peat is result of a slow, incomplete decomposition of the remains of plants. So the vegetation and water will be like very vital components. And also the low or no situation is actually the result of this waterlogged condition. So, and instead the draining will be the opposite of peat formation. So yeah, that's the first question. We will go to the next question. I hope you guys are ready. Yeah, so the second question is as follows. To prevent further degradation, the foremost thing to do in peatland utilization is, so which is the most vital thing to do to prevent degradation in peatland? You have four options. Okay, so again, only 9 people answer. I hope this is not too fast. I apologize if that's the case. But yeah, the 4 people here answering the right one, which is stop the draining, because as mentioned before, water is very important component of peatland. So the managing peatlands is actually, if you can summarize it, is about keeping it wet. And with no draining, there will be less subsidence, less carbon emission, and then eventually less degradation. All right, so the third question, yeah, the third question is as follows. What is the definition of sustainable development that is agreed globally? We talked before about there is no like right or wrong definition of sustainable, but there is actually one definition according this like specific organization. You have also 4 options here. Oh, okay. So 6 people answering the right one. It is the third option, which is based on the 87 Brundtland report titled Our Common Future. So the World Commission on Environment a long time ago defined the sustainable development like that. The development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the future generation ability to meet their own needs. So yeah, congratulations for the one that answering the right one. And we are going to the fourth, second to last question. So this is again about land management. Proper land management will contribute positively to global sustainability, except which one do you think is not sustainable among the 4 options here? Oh, so 6 people answering the right one, which is not about sustainability, that is adding carbon to our atmosphere. Because even today, the situation with the CO2, the carbon in our atmosphere, is the one that affecting the climate change. So if it's about adding more carbon, then it will actually a negative thing. And the other option is actually the ecosystem services or the good things about ecosystem or a landscape that that we have discussed before. Okay, so I think we are now in the last questions. This might be a bit trivial, so I believe it might be difficult, but it might be not for people that actually know things about this. So here we go, the last question. you can see a picture on the screen, on your screen. So the question is, what is the name? What is the man in the photo called? And this is actually a fossil. Yeah, I think a fossil, a mummy that was found in a pit body in Denmark. Oh, okay. So 3 people answering the right answer. Congratulations. I'm not sure if you just lucky or you actually know the answer, because actually, fun fact, a lot of body is preserved in both, which is one type of peatland globally, and a lot of them are found or are recovered in Denmark, in Jutland Peninsula. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I'm sorry if, if I'm wrong. But this particular body was recovered and then given name Thailand man, and it is quite famous, more famous compared to the other bodies because of the distinct facial expression that is preserved in the pit. So yeah, that's the end of our quiz. And now I will share with you the winner from our 5-question quiz. Okay, so we actually have Wolfmeister here, who is the winner of the quiz. Congratulations, Wolfmeister. You can maybe identify yourself in the chat box, and then later one of the team will contact you privately. So not only the first winner, the Wolfmeister, and also Leonardo, who is the second winner, will get a token of gratitude from us, basically. Because you have followed the quiz and you have followed the webinar until it's finished. And please don't forget for Wolfmeister and Leonardo to screenshot your winning screen as a proof that you are actually the one that wins. Okay, so congratulations for the winners, and we are going. So we will go back to the presentation again. So yeah, so did the panelists also join join the quiz or not? Because I believe Sara and Zahara will maybe answer it all right.
Yeah, no, I didn't join.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. Okay. So now we are actually at the very end of the event, unfortunately, but we have spent the time together for like 2 hours and more. Yeah, so I just want to, while the winner of the quiz, please contact us in the chat box, and yeah, in the chat box, and the team, one of us will contact you privately to ask about some details. And then yeah, this is the end basically of the event. But before we actually finish, also I want you to fill the survey in the link that will be shared in the chat box. But also you can go to the browser and type that the tiny.cc/exit pit talk, and it is contained of survey about this event, and then also for the e-certification distribution purpose. So we will have some of your contacts to send the e-certificate to you, and please expect that within 1 or 2 weeks, at the latest. And yeah, if there are any questions that left unanswered, please just reach out to us from our website in thaijuhanafoundation.org, or to our email in info@thaijuhanafoundation.org, or in our social media. We are quite active in Instagram. It's always open. You can always DM us. And then if you maybe want to reach the panelists here directly, you can also reach them via email or via Instagram. We tag them in our poster in the Instagram poster. So yeah, thank you everyone for for joining this webinar. And while we are waiting for everyone to fill in the survey, I also want to share maybe like a closing statement or about the how to say, like the opinion from the panelists, the comment from the panelists about this event. Maybe we can start from the guests, from Sara. What do you think?
Oh, it's been great. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's always wonderful to meet others, you know, yeah, like Zahara and Rainer and you know, build networks and connections across organizations and just people who are interested in peatland research and restoration and all of these complicated issues. So it's been, yeah, a great experience, and I hope we can keep in touch. And if anyone has any further questions, then yeah, I'm happy for you to contact me over email. Noya has my email, and happy for that to be shared. So I don't know if I should, I've got Twitter as well, which people can follow me on. Should I put my contact details in the chat, or what do you think is the best way? Or they just do it through contacting you?
Yeah, I mean, we have your Instagram account tagged in our poster in Instagram, and if anyone wants to ask and have the email or the Twitter account from Sara, maybe you can share it on the chat box. It's really okay.
I'll share my Twitter.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to reach out to Sara about peatland or maybe the other things, please share to her directly. And also, do you still want to talk about something, Sara, or is it enough?
Oh no, I mean, we've covered so many topics. So I think this is a great, it was a really like well-rounded discussion, and yeah, I commend you for organizing this, and yeah, thank you for inviting me. So
yeah, thank you for you as well for having us. And how about you, Zahara? What do you think about this session, or do you have anything more to add before we actually finish?
Not really. I think we've talked about these issues a lot before. But yeah, I would like to thank Sara for making time to attend this discussion, because actually this is the first time where TGF can actually invite an international researcher to our discussion, and we just feel honored. I also have learned a lot about what we do about improving our research or the agriculture practice. I think we can have a further discussion about that, like how to improve and what to assess, but to actually have an objective view regarding to how the peatland management issues. So thanks again, Sara, for having us in this forum. Yeah, see you later.
yeah, thank you, and I look forward to continuing the conversation as well.
Yeah, it's really a wonderful time, and I'm a bit sad that Rainer is not here, but yeah, because of his busy schedule, he also already informed me that he might not be available for the whole event. But he also said that he is although he might not follow peatland very closely, unlike Zahara and Sara, he also wants to know. So that's the thing that I really appreciate from him. He's the one that is sustainably enthusiast, and he also understands about how peatland nowadays become like a hot topic, a sexy issue that everyone believe is worth discussing. And that's why he agreed to join us and then share his perspective, which I believe very complementary. Like maybe Sara and Zahara can be considered as a peatland enthusiast, and we need someone to represent like more general or common view. And I really thankful for Rainer to do that. So yeah, it's really a wonderful event. And for the participant, please, if you are not fill in the exit ticket, please do it right now, because after we finish this webinar, if you are following this webinar but not yet in the survey, in the exit ticket. You can also access that later, maybe in our Instagram. But yeah, I advise you to do it now, so that we can follow you up with the e-certificate. And then again, congratulations for the winner of the quiz. I hope for everyone, not only for the one that following the quiz, you actually get something fruitful from this webinar about peatland and sustainability, which is it is still a very broad aspect, a very broad issue, and I believe 2 hours, 2 hours, it's not enough at all to talk about the topic. So that's why I hope also we can meet again in later time with Sara and also with Zara and Rainer, and also maybe the other participant and the other, and I believe we will invite other experts also in our next webinar. So yeah, I think that's all from me. I will officially close this webinar, but I will still open the room to let other people to fill out the survey if they didn't do it yet. But yeah, I just want again to say thanks to all the panelists and to all the participants that have been with us for more than 2 hours. So yeah, it's really been a very great time with you.